Micropayments, Immutable Data, and the Economic Revolution of Near-Zero Transaction Costs. 1 Cent Revolution, How Micropayments and Immutable Proof Rewrite the Economics of Data. By Craig Wright. Keywords: micropayments, transaction cost economics, immutable data, provable evidence trail, cohesion theory, microtransaction markets, data monetization, information asymmetry, game theoretic incentives, digital asset pricing, econometrics of trust, long-tail economics, principal agent model, autonomous data exchange, cost of verification, marginal utility of data. 1. Introduction. Data is no longer a byproduct, no longer the waste that leaks out of machines and people and quietly drowns in the shadows of corporate silos. It is the raw currency of the digital age, pulsing through wires and clouds like blood through veins. Imagine a world where each shard of data, every sensor reading, every click, every fragment of human thought digitized, can be traded for 1/100th of a US cent. The price is small enough to be almost nothing, yet the sum of these fragments becomes colossal. Bukowski would call it filthy, like coins scraped from the gutter, while Rand would see it as the rational expression of value, the individual claiming the rightful wage for every sliver of creation. Immutable, provable exchanges, each marked with an unbroken evidence trail, kill the parasite of doubt. They dissolve the fog of information asymmetry that distorts markets, replacing blind trust with verifiable proof. Transaction theory tells us that when costs of exchange vanish, markets expand with ruthless efficiency, shattering the monoliths that exist only to internalize friction. The thesis here is simple and merciless. Reducing transactional friction to negligible levels ignites entire new market structures, dragging hidden value into the light. It transforms the architecture of commerce, rewrites the calculus of risk, and realigns incentives, forcing individuals and corporations to act in the clarity of proof, where every transaction, no matter how small, leaves its indelible mark. 2. Theoretical underpinnings. Transaction cost economics, TCE, is the knife that carves through the fat of modern markets. Ronald Coase, in The Nature of the Firm, argued that firms exist because market transactions are costly. Negotiating, enforcing, and verifying contracts bleeds time and resources. When transaction costs fall towards zero, the logic of the firm starts to crumble. Market coordination, with its swarm of decentralized actors, becomes not just viable but superior. The hierarchy, with all its bloated bureaucrats and layers of inefficiency, is exposed for what it is, a structure built to hide the costs of its own friction. A micropayment system, charging 1/100th of a cent per provable data exchange, forces this reckoning. It slices the economic fabric so thin that the old structures no longer hold. Oliver Williamson sharpened Coase insight, painting the landscape of markets with opportunism and bounded rationality. Firms hoard control because individuals, driven by self-interest, might cheat, lie, or twist the truth. But immutable, provable records kill opportunism like a well-placed bullet. When every action is cryptographically notarized and visible, the cost of deception skyrockets. The market can now rely on truth at a price so low it barely registers, a silent revolution that annihilates the excuses for hierarchy. Information economics adds another dimension. Akerlof's Market for Lemons showed how asymmetry of information destroys trust and value, while Spence's signaling theory illustrated the desperate, costly dances agents perform to prove legitimacy. Immutable data with an evidence trail turns signaling into a trivial transaction. Proof is baked into the system, leaving no space for the rot of uncertainty. By removing asymmetry, these systems open new markets where exchange was previously impossible. Here lies the brutal beauty. When trust becomes cheap and proof is automatic, every transaction can stand naked under the light of verifiability. 3. Micropayments and the price of data. Micropayments, at the scale of 1/100th of a cent, shatter the monolithic pricing structures of the digital economy. They carve value into fragments so fine that even the smallest data packets, the fleeting heartbeat of an IoT sensor, a half-second of a video stream, a single keystroke, can be priced and exchanged in real time. This granularity of value creates a market where nothing is too small to matter. It rejects the waste of bundled subscriptions and advertising models, replacing them with the ruthless precision of per byte and per event pricing. Bukowski would scoff at the smallness of the sums, but Rand would see the fierce integrity, a system where every unit of creation is recognized and rewarded, no matter how minute. The marginal cost of digital data reproduction is almost zero. Traditional economics would argue this makes pricing difficult. When supply is infinite, value collapses. Yet, the mechanism of micropayments resists this collapse by introducing an incentive-compatible structure. Even if the cost of duplication is negligible, the act of validation, the creation of immutable proof, and the guarantee of provenance become the service being paid for. This is not the price of bits, but the price of certainty, of verifiable existence. Each microtransaction becomes a handshake signed in iron, too cheap to matter individually but powerful in aggregate. This model monetizes what has long been discarded as exhaust. IoT telemetry, temperature readings, motion data, microsignals from autonomous machines, suddenly carries a price. User-generated microcontent, which once served as free fodder for data-hungry platforms, can now yield value directly to its creator, creating a decentralized flow of rewards that bypasses the middleman. The individual becomes the sovereign owner of their digital shadow. Price elasticity of demand for microinformation is extreme. As the price nears zero, the demand for fragments of data skyrockets. Long-tail market dynamics emerge. The Pareto distribution, which governs content consumption, now finds a new frontier. Rare, niche data points that were previously ignored gain value because the cost of accessing them is infinitesimal. The market no longer focuses only on blockbuster content or mass signals, but rewards every node in the chain, every whisper of information, every granular piece of context. This is capitalism sharpened to its purest edge, where even the smallest voice can be heard and priced. 4. Evidence trails and the economics of proof. The backbone of any functioning market is trust, and trust has always been expensive. It bleeds through legal systems, litigation, regulatory frameworks, an endless cost of ensuring that contracts are honored and promises kept. Immutable evidence trails flip this equation. In game-theoretic terms, the payoff matrix is altered. The cost of cheating outweighs any short-term gain because fraud leaves a permanent scar, visible to all participants. Disputes, once resolved through costly enforcement mechanisms, are preempted by a ledger that is both unalterable and public in its veracity. The transaction itself becomes self-enforcing. The ledger becomes the silent judge, the executioner of doubt. Principal-agent theory, long plagued by asymmetry between those who act and those who must trust them, finds a new equilibrium. Traditionally, monitoring costs and incentive schemes are required to align the agent's interests with the principal's goals. Immutable, provable data annihilates much of this cost structure. Contracts can be written on the foundation of verifiable events, with each microtransaction acting as both performance indicator and payment. Trustless arrangements become not a theoretical ideal but an operational norm. Econometrically, the system shifts from expectation under uncertainty to expectation under near certainty. Expected utility calculations gain precision because transaction history can be treated as an unbroken series of observable events, each verified and immutable. Bayesian updating, where beliefs about counterparties are adjusted based on new evidence, becomes sharper and more reliable. Every data point is proof, every exchange a signal that strengthens or weakens trust with mathematical clarity. The economics of proof fosters micro-incentivized honesty. When every lie has a cost and every truth a micro-reward, market participants are nudged into transparent behavior. Creditworthiness ceases to be an opaque score and becomes a dynamic reflection of immutable actions. The result is a market where reputation is not built on declarations or promises, but on a chain of verified events, each a testament to integrity. 5. Global market transformation, 350 to 400 words. Impacts on financial services, remittance markets, cross-border data commerce, and content streaming. Creative destruction in traditional payment networks, network effects no longer bottlenecked by high fixed fees. Economies of scale versus scope. Microfees allow hyper-personalized pricing models, petabyte per second streaming. Networked IoT economies, autonomous machine-to-machine markets where every data point carries microvalue. 6. Societal and ethical dimensions. The commodification of data at the level of fractions of a cent stirs both promise and unease. On one side, the system liberates value from the overlooked microassets that spill from daily life. Sensor readings, casual comments, fleeting clicks, all now capable of earning their keep. On the other, the total monetization of human activity risks turning every gesture, every breath of digital existence, into an economic transaction. Bukowski would sneer at this sterile arithmetic, calling out the grimy underbelly of markets where surveillance morphs into monetization and even privacy is auctioned off, byte by byte. The anarchic mess of data becomes both a treasure trove and a trap, where every interaction is mined, priced, and resold. Rand's lens, however, is unflinching and precise. To her, the creator of data, whether a writer, a driver, or a sensor owner, has a moral right to claim value for their creation. The act of pricing data is not an indignity but a recognition of its worth. By replacing the charity of free services with a mechanism of direct reward, the individual steps out from under the shadow of centralized platforms that live off unpriced labor and captured attention. This redistribution of economic power strikes at the heart of rent-seeking giants. Platforms built on hoarding user data must confront a future where their monopolies are fractured by markets that price every contribution in real time. The result is a shift of agency. Users are no longer the product, but the sovereign traders of their digital footprints. In this tension, between the chaotic reality Bukowski captures and the fierce clarity Rand demands, lies the ethical frontier of the micropayment era. 7. Conclusion. The collapse of transaction costs to near zero, combined with the ironclad permanence of immutable proof, signals the birth of a new economic order. This is not a minor adjustment at the margins of commerce. It is a fundamental rewrite of how value is measured, exchanged, and defended. With micropayments slicing through the fat of traditional pricing models, every byte of information can stand on its own, valued not because of scale or monopoly but because of its inherent utility. Immutable records lock each exchange into an indestructible narrative, stripping away the shadows where inefficiency and deceit once thrived. In the voice of Rand, this is the uncompromising recognition of reality, a market governed by evidence, not manipulation. Through Bukowski's lens, it's raw and unglamorous. Every whisper of information must earn its keep, every transaction leaves its scar. Together, they speak of an economy where the strong architecture of verifiable truth smashes the parasites of obscurity, where both individuals and machines engage in commerce without the drag of doubt or the weight of middlemen. This era belongs to those who create, prove, and trade with clarity, a brutal but liberating marketplace forged in the fire of proof.